You're listening to Midlife Side Quest, the Over the Hill Gaming podcast. Here's your host, John Wall.
It's December 19th, 2024, and welcome to another episode of Midlife Side Quest, the Over the Hill video game podcast. My name is John Wall, and every Thursday morning I bring you video game impressions, the latest industry news, and tales of a Gen X geek delivered to you in 15 minutes, or your next podcast is free. To make sure you never miss an episode, you can subscribe to the show on all major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And I would be very grateful if you left a review while you were there. Thank you so much for tuning in today. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. But first, let's check out some of the week's news over at VGC. And at a recent shareholder meeting, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella reaffirmed that the plan going forward is to allow video game players to play Xbox on as many devices as they can. Responding to a question about their gaming strategy, Nadella stated, "I'm feeling very, very good about where we are in gaming." Speaking about the success of the recent launch of Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and he went on to say, quote, "I think in the long term, as a company, we can bring the best of the AI innovations, cloud innovation, console innovation, and PC innovation to build the best games that can be enjoyed by gamers everywhere." I think Xbox has made some smart moves to survive in a market that has increasingly dug its heels in, shifting their strategy to adapt to a changing landscape. Whether that shows to have been successful, we won't know until later down the road. But I think it's clear that following the same strategy that they had been with the Xbox One, or even that, PlayStation is going with now, would have been a big mistake. I'll continue to purchase Xbox console hardware as long as they make it because I believe they create the best console experience, but who knows what the future holds? Even one of the richest companies in the world can't predict that. Don't remember exactly when I first saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. It came out in 1981, so I was like 4 years old. I'm sure it was several years later whenever it landed on HBO. I do remember the feeling, though, the excitement of watching this incredible adventure that was equal parts thrilling and terrifying. It had the dashing hero, the beautiful but tough love interest, the evil Nazis, and the mystery of an ancient religious artifact imbued with supernatural powers that was just believable enough to scare the crap out of a kid who was dragged along to Catholic Mass every Sunday. I had never seen anything like this before. To this day, the love I have for the Indiana Jones films is nearly unmatched. Not Lord of the Rings or Back to the Future or even Star Wars can hold a candle to Indy in my book. And yes, I will go to my grave singing the praises of the Dial of Destiny, which I think was a great send-off for the character. I truly hope that Hollywood wouldn't dare and try and recast the role for some kind of reboot. Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. Period. End of story. So while it seems like we've probably seen the last of Indy on movie screens, I am thrilled about the prospect of his adventures continuing on in gaming because MachineGames, along with Bethesda and Xbox, have absolutely nailed the heart and soul of what makes a great Indiana Jones adventure. The story of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle takes place shortly after the events of Raiders and has Indy globetrotting around the world trying to figure out why somebody broke into the university while he and Brody were sleeping off a night of drinking and stole a fairly unremarkable artifact. Of course, as is usually the case, the stolen object is much more important than anyone had realized, and Indy goes up against the usual collections of thugs and Nazis to try and get the relic back and discover what secret power it supposedly holds. From the moment that game started, I knew I was in for something really special. I won't say anything specific about the beginning, but I was pretty stunned by the whole thing, and my wife, who was watching alongside me, just kept saying, wow, wow. The visuals are stunning. The music is exactly what you would want, with a great mix of the classic John Williams themes plus an original score, and the portrayal of Indiana Jones is just about perfect. The character model they used looks great and captures the look of a young Harrison Ford wonderfully, right down to the scar on his chin. And Troy Baker, who does the voice and performance capture, is just, he nails it. It just is wonderful. Does it sound 100% like Ford all of the time? No, but it's really darn close. And he nails all the little mannerisms that Ford brought to the character. I just don't know if they could have done a better job. And it's a dang shame that the Game Awards have such an early deadline, because Baker would have been a shoo-in for a nomination, I think. And for as much as they nail the presentation of the game, the gameplay is nearly as good, but not necessarily in all the ways that I was expecting. Even though that I knew this was from the creators of Wolfenstein and that they were sticking to their first-person perspective that they, usually use, I was expecting a much more linear, on-rails kind of experience, something quick and flashy with non-stop action. And that would have been totally fine. What we got, though, was something more akin to an immersive sim like Dishonored or Prey. They really let you spend a lot of time in these large environments and explore every corner of them. I took my time in the first major location, which is Vatican City, and I got most of the optional objectives, and that took me like 8 or 9 hours before I was ready to move on. The spaces are just filled with secrets and collectibles and side missions, and it all really works to make you feel like Professor Jones. Another thing that surprised me is that I don't know if I would necessarily call this a action game. There's certainly action, but you'll spend a lot of your time trying to avoid fights if you can, sneaking around behind crates and vehicles, or putting on a Nazi uniform to try and sneak into a camp to get what you're looking for. The stealth is pretty good, too. It's fun to find different ways to get where you're trying to go. You have got lots of options on how you want to approach an objective. If anything, I'd say the AI is a little forgiving, and enemies will quickly forget you, if you duck back behind cover. But they're Nazis, so I guess it makes sense that they're not very bright. You will have to fight, obviously from time to time, and the combat, while maybe not mechanically super interesting, is fun because it plays out very much like a fight would in the movies. You'll mostly be using your fists by punching your way out of trouble, which thankfully features that trademark Indiana Jones crack of a good punch. And you can use whatever you find laying around to clobber your enemies. A frying pan, a bottle, a wrench. There's tons of stuff usually lying around to turn into a fascist beating utensil. You can also use your whip to knock guns out of enemies' hands or pull them down off of ledges. And you can use a gun if you really need to, but it's almost never a great idea. Bullets are pretty limited for one, and the sound of gunfire will attract more thugs, meaning you'll be pretty quickly overrun. I found the fighting pretty satisfying and true to the source material. When you're not being sneaky or breaking a Nazi's nose with a tire iron, you're solving puzzles. And there's a lot of them in the game. They aren't particularly, difficult or like super clever. This isn't The Witness, but they're usually fun and fit right into the world of Indiana Jones. One minute you might be, aligning mirrors to reflect sunlight in a certain way that's going to open a door. Then you might be decoding and organizing the words of an ancient language to spell out a clue. Again, a lot of it's stuff, you've probably seen before in other games, but it's satisfying. And, let's be honest, Lara Croft and Nathan Drake stole most of their ideas from Indy in the first place, so it's fine. It's weird because when you take any individual part of the game on its own, it maybe isn't spectacular. The graphics are really good, but can get a little buggy in places. The combat is fun, but the enemy AI is kind of dumb. But there's some kind of magic that happens when it all comes together that elevates it so much more than the sum of its parts. I think a big part of that is just how much they nail the feel of Indiana Jones. I mean, it looks, sounds, and feels like you're in one of the movies, which, despite all of its flaws, makes it one of my favorite games I've played not only this year, but in quite a while. I haven't finished the game yet. I'm probably about 20 hours or so into it because I'm loving just being in this world so much. I want to stay here as long as I can, explore every tomb, find every artifact, and punch every Nazi. They've amazingly recreated a world that I've loved since I was a little kid playing with my Raiders action figures on the floor. And like the movies that it's based on, it's not perfect, but I love it with my whole heart nonetheless. This episode is the final show of 2024. This year's been tough. I mean, tough doesn't begin to do it justice, really. It's been devastating at times. But as hard as it's been, I try to remain grateful for what I have, like an incredible family. 2024 may have beaten us down and bent us about as far as we could go, but it didn't break us. They have proven to be so resilient and so supportive. It's more than any guy could ever hope for. And together we've gotten through a lot. I also got to take them on a trip which was nothing short of life-changing. Our time in Japan was the kind of life-affirming vacation that showed me that there is so much beauty in this world that I still want to see, and so many amazing people who are willing to be kind and helpful to a complete stranger. My life is now defined by two halves, before I went to Japan and after. And I have this show. Not only has it been a creative outlet for something I have always loved to do, talk about games, but it has helped me to connect with amazing people online who have a shared love of this medium and are wonderful and supportive to each other. And Birdo, too. I'm off next week for the holidays, so happy Hanukkah, have a joyful Kwanzaa, and Merry Christmas. I'll see you back on January 2nd and 3rd for the Midlife SideQuest Game of the Year 2-part celebration. And thank you so much for listening to Midlife SideQuest. I appreciate you making time in your day to hang out with me. You can catch new episodes of the show every Thursday morning wherever you listen to podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review while you're there. You can also find me on Blue Sky or Threads by searching for Midlife Side Quest. So until next time, be well and happy gaming.